Hello and welcome to News 20 at 5. I'm Brea Hollingsworth.
And I'm Giselle Thomas. Thanks for joining us. Now we have the biggest story of the day out of New York City.
8 people were killed and 13 people were injured. New Yorkers undergo yet another terrorist attack shortly after 3 p.m. yesterday. And Halloween festivities were put on hold. A rented Home Depot truck plowed through a bicycle path. Police identified the driver as being 29-year-old Sayfullo Saipov. And again, it happened yesterday in Manhattan when the suspect drove a rented truck through a bike path. Kristen Holmes is in New York with the very latest.
This was an act of terror, and a particularly cowardly act of terror aimed at innocent civilians.
It was just after 3 p.m. Tuesday when Sayfullo Saipov, a 29-year-old Uzbek national, drove a rented truck into a crowd of bicyclists and pedestrians near the World Trade Center.
It happened out of nowhere. I was walking down the street. It was a normal day, and just out of nowhere, I see people running and screaming.
Witnesses also report the suspect shouted Allahu Akbar, and a law enforcement official says there was a note in the truck claiming the attack was done in the name of ISIS.
He was associated with ISIS, and he was radicalized domestically, and he's a depraved coward.
Saipov was shot and captured by NYPD officer Ryan Nash.
After the collision, the driver of the truck, a 29-year-old male, exited the vehicle brandishing 2 handguns. A uniformed police officer assigned to the 1st Precinct confronted the subject and shot him in the abdomen. The subject was wounded and transported to a local hospital.
The focus now, the investigation into what happened and why.
That work's going to be done by the FBI, by the NYPD, and all of our partners to determine exactly who this man is, what moved him to this horrible act.
In Lower Manhattan, I'm Kristen Holmes.
The FBI, NYPD, and other members of the Joint Terrorism Task Force are now investigating the attack.
Leon County Commissioner Bill Proctor is urging City Manager Rick Fernandez to fire the Community Redevelopment Agency's top official, Roxanne Manning. In light of the CRA and FBI investigation on her watch, Proctor, a member of the CRA's 9 members board, wrote a 6-page letter about her shortcomings. Manning said she had no knowledge of the letter and she offered no further commitment on the matter. A Los Angeles company owner was indicted on wire fraud charges. The company was hired to do specialty license plates for a Florida nonprofit. The owner, Michael D. Towner, faces the 16 counts of wire fraud. Towner's 2 companies were hired as marketers for the Florida Live the Dream license plates provided by the Dream Foundation. Investigative officials say Towner made authorized transfers at an estimated $250,000 between July 2010 and November 2016. This was well over the percentage allowed under Florida law. The maximum sentence for wire fraud is 20 years in prison. Welcome to News 20 at 5 on this Wednesday afternoon. I'm Giselle Thomas.
And I'm Brea Hollingsworth. We're saddened to hear that the Rattler family has lost one of our very own.
The Rattler community is mourning the loss of journalism student 19-year-old Emoja Mullings.
According to the Florida Highway Patrol, Mullings died after a crash in Suwannee County when she was ejected from a car on Sunday. Troopers say the Toyota Camry carried 4 occupants when it traveled off of the road and onto the north shoulder, where it overturned, hitting several tree stumps and eventually a wire fence that halted the car. This week, the university is offering grief counseling, and students are planning a vigil to honor Mullings' life. The Florida Highway Patrol reports that Mullings was not wearing a seatbelt. The crash remains under investigation.
Governor Rick Scott proposes a $1 million in funding for adding security at Jewish schools. With the incident last December, when several letters of hate-filled messages were delivered through the mail to the Shomra Torah synagogue. Governor Scott has planned to beef up security across Florida with $1 million of the proposed 2018-2019 budget. Scott saw the need to provide additional security so that children who attend Jewish day schools can learn without having to worry about feeling threatened. This is not the first action Scott has taken this year with Jewish schools. In January, he signed the Fight for Florida's Future budget, which provided more than $650,000 in funding for security measures.
A Florida mother who says her 4-year-old son died after choking at a school is speaking out. Lindsay Hall says she does not want this to happen to anyone else. She says she sent her son to Sherwood Elementary on September 19th, thinking he'd come home safe, but that did not happen. Bryant Clarkley has the story.
It's been almost a month since Lindsay Hall saw her son alive. She says she thinks school officials did not get to her son in time.
I suspect that just because of the bruise on his forehead that I saw when I got there, which explains to me that he choked until he passed out, and nobody saw that.
Hall says her son had special needs and he choked on his food often.
If he would have stayed home that day, that wouldn't have happened. I mean, I know that wouldn't have happened. I would have gotten him in time. I would have gotten it out. I always have before, and I would have to that day. I blame myself for sending him to school every freaking day.
Hall says it will always be hard for her to accept that her son choked at school. She doesn't want any parents to experience the pain she's going through.
You never want to get that phone call from school that something's wrong with your kid or you're being ambulanced over somewhere. I mean, that's just not something you want to hear, especially when I send my kids to school, I think they're going to be safe and everything's going to be taken care of and stuff like that, and it wasn't.
The Escambia County School Superintendent released a statement last month saying, quote, "We don't make any statements specific to the students. The district is not going to make any comment at all," end quote. The district deputy superintendent said each building has individuals trained in CPR, the Heimlich maneuver, along with automated external defibrillators. When asked if trained staff were on duty when the child choked, the deputy superintendent said he could not provide further comment on the situation out of respect for the family. And Governor Rick Scott declares a state of emergency ahead of a white nationalist speech. White nationalist Richard Spencer is holding an event tomorrow at the University of Florida where an anti-fascist group will also protest the event. Both sides posted on social media about using violence. Governor Scott stated that while freedom of speech is just, the government must also preserve the safety of its citizens. University officials say at least 500 law enforcement officers are expected to be on hand.
The Jefferson County Clerk of Court was arrested for a nude photo shoot at the Jefferson County Courthouse. Early Monday, Kirk Reams turned himself in at the county jail. Around the end of last year, Reams allegedly took naked photos of former girlfriend Brittany McClellan in the circuit judge's chambers near Reams' office.
Giselle FAMU mourns the loss of founding Allied Health Sciences Dean Jacqueline Beck. Former Dean Beck was a native of Gulfport, Mississippi, but lived in Tallahassee for more than 50 years. Back in 2007, the university commemorated her by renaming the building that houses FAMU's Allied Health Sciences programs in honor along with the late nursing school dean, Margaret Lewis. Beck is being remembered as a strong, kind, and steadfast leader and national trailblazer. Beck was 86 when she passed away on Halloween, and her funeral is scheduled for Friday, November 10th at 11 a.m. at the Bethel Missionary Baptist Church in Tallahassee.